Good evening, everyone. Make sure. My name is Barbara Phillips. For those of you not aware, I'm with Community Network Council. And I would like to welcome everyone this evening. We have an exciting presentation by Dr. Eddie Moore. This is the second community presentation in our series of 4. And the last one, the previous one, was hosted by Melvin Tate. We had Chief Padilla with the Kent Police Department and Chief Bowe with Urian Police Department, and finding out what's going on in the community. How can we help addressing issues? So it was very successful, and this is our second one. Next week, we have one on the critical race theory. So to begin, I am do a short bio. Many of you know Dr. Eddie Moore, who's been partnering with CNC over the past couple of years. He's an author, co-author with the book, White Women Who Teach Black Boys. He's a national known speaker, and he's CNC partner, and we're glad to have him. So I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Moore.
Okay, what's up, everybody? Thank y'all for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you, Barbara, for the introduction. Aubrey, the technological genius behind everything, making it happen. Thank you for all your work behind the scenes. I see some of the staff from CNC. I see my good brother, Melvin Tate there. I just really want to take a second, though, to commend Barbara, the leadership at CNC. There are lots of great organizations doing great stuff across the nation, no doubt. They're in the, I'm sure, Pacific Northwest, but I just want to celebrate Barbara Phillips, one, because when the book, White Women Teaching Black Boys, released, as you can imagine, that title wasn't received by everybody with open arms. But Barbara Phillips was one of the leaders. CNC was one of the organizations that was willing and ready to be in partnership. And we've been doing so, and with the help of her and Melvin and the staff, I feel like we've been making some gains around this subject matter, chipping away. And I'm really, I feel honored to be a part of this team. And again, some of the staff who are on, we've been working together now for a couple of years or so. And I just want to thank y'all for all your work. But this is really to say, Barbara Phillips, I appreciate you, sister, really being courageous, really being the kind of leader that's, giving me a platform, giving me a partnership when I'm out here trying to push beyond kumbaya and really challenge folks to do some work that's going to move the needle around these topics. So I want to celebrate CNC, but especially their fearless leader. Tonight, what I want y'all to think about is, most people think they're more accepting than they really are. And this is all people, not just white folks. What we want to do tonight, and some of you have been in conversation with me, relationship with me, friends with me for a number of years. What we want to do tonight is really just talk about, I've been at it since 1996, just really talk about how things have changed over those years. I mean, I think it's safe to say, I think we could all be in agreement. We're living in a different world now, literally, for a number of different reasons. And what we're going to focus on tonight, though, is how the work of diversity has changed dramatically in the world we're living in and will be living in over these next 25 years. I don't know if any of you have seen the recent census numbers from 2020, but basically in a nutshell, what they're saying is America is at the point it's been the most diverse in its history. Now, that may not be a surprise to y'all, but a lot of folks are not receiving that with open arms. But the fact of the matter is America is changing, the world is changing. And we have got to be preparing ourselves, better preparing ourselves in reference to the skills associated with diversity and inclusion. Now some folks are using belonging, and that's what we're going to talk about today, how this work has been changing. And I'm going to do some talking, but I want to get y'all participating, writing in the chat or unmuting, as I call family style. You know, I don't ask people to participate like they do in the classroom in my presentations. I ask them to participate like they do at the family reunion. Like, you don't raise your hand and wait on your turn. You know what I'm saying? Just jump in there and give your thought or contribute or ask your question if you got some. And I just really want to make sure I'm not talking the whole time. And then we'll have some times at the end. If you want to ask some specific questions or more questions, we can have some conversations about that as well. So let me turn to my slides here right now. And hopefully everybody give me 2 thumbs up. You can see that? You see the screen? Everybody, okay, great, great. All right. So just check out the title. Okay. Again, some of y'all old schoolers remember back in 1996, 1990, when you had a little afro, had a little hair, you know, you're a bit more springy in your step back in the day. Think about the titles of the workshops back in those days. Think about the topics we were talking about. Think about the current events, the issues that were going on. If you can remember as far back as Rodney King and all the things that happened after incidents like that in reference to training and conversations. If you can remember NWA or Master P and some of the hip hop back in those days and some of the conversations we were having or people were having at schools with kids in reference to the words and lyrics. And think about where we are now. Think about what is the work of diversity today. And again, depending on who you talk to, people are not just saying diversity. They're having other words included with that. And that's what you see in the title here: diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. That is new, y'all. Okay? This is not something that people have been doing over the last 25 years. Many times they may have diversity and inclusion. Equity is relatively new in reference to, you know, I think people having it in titles, but particularly in job descriptions or job titles. And now we have belonging. And we're going to talk about that, just how the work has changed. Now, Harold Melvin in the Blue Notes singing years ago about teachers teaching different material in the classroom. It's just amazing how they were so visionary in their lyrics. Now, they're talking about wake up. Now, how many people do you know are woke today? Are you woke? I want to have a conversation about what this even means. Some of y'all who walking around talking about you woke today. What does that even mean? And how do you stay woke? That's some of what we're going to be grappling with here today. The work of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Stay woke. If you have any questions, if you want to stay in touch, I mean, some of y'all know how to find me already, but here's all my contact information. I'll send this workshop out to you if you want it. I only send my workshop to people who ask for it. I don't send it to the presenters or to the people who host me and ask them to send it out. If you want my workshop, then you make an effort to email me and say, hey, Doc, can you send that to me? And my email is right here on the contact screen. Okay, so if you want this, email me and I'll send it out to you. If you want to stay in touch, if you got more questions, if you want to remember or be able to refer back to this, this is a resource-oriented presentation for you to be better prepared, for you to have more skills. Now, again, if you're saying you're inclusive-minded, if you're saying you're committed to equity and diversity, if you're saying you're down with belonging, my question is, what's your proof? What have you been doing? Is it a trip you've taken, or is it a friendship you have? Did you read a book? Did you actually participate in some skill building opportunities? I think we're at a time now as we look at this work where we can't just take people's word for it, that we have to have a different level of accountability when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So as we participate here today, I want you to think about, where are your skills? What are you familiar with? What are you comfortable with? What work have you done? What questions do you have? That's why we're here today, to really have this conversation about past, present, future. So if you want to stay in touch, this is how you find me. All right, let's get started. All right, first slide is basically talking about what I just mentioned earlier about demographics. I use this just because it's a great way to just put it in a simple form. If you did the world in 100 people, here's what it would look like. Here's what I want you to pay attention to, though. How things are different is, most of the time when people are talking about diversity, they're talking about Black folks and white folks, race stuff. What we're now seeing, what we're now realizing, what we're now experiencing across the nation, in the workplace, in the schools, so on and so forth, is not just race diversity, but religion, gender, so on and so forth. So when you think about your acceptance, your willingness to be accepting, I meet so many people that love Black folks, or they love race, but when it comes to LGBTQ, it's a different kind of challenge. Or they are down with issues of gender, but when it comes to economics, they have some challenges. I just want to be clear. If you are committed to inclusion, diversity, equity, belonging, then in the words of one of my favorite songs, that means everybody. Everybody. That's the kind of skill set I want to ask you to be thinking about. That's where I think the skill set of the future lies with young people, is we want them to be able to show up at work, and no matter who's there, they're accepting, they're inclusive. They're able to work with, challenge, be challenged by, supervise, or be supervised by. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I didn't get comprehensive diversity skills growing up. That's the future. So this gives you a sense of what's happening in our nation right now. And the fastest growing diversity population is actually multiracial. Now, some of y'all remember growing up where it's like Black dude, white woman, it's like the curse of ham. I mean, it was a fight in the neighborhood. You couldn't even roll up in the neighborhood with a white woman back when I was growing up in the day. Now we're seeing those kinds of relationships, not only Black, white, but Latinx and Asian Pacific Islander. There's a great book out called Mix, written by this guy named Kip Fulbright. In that book, you open it up, it's all pictorial. And you will see what he's trying to demonstrate is the future of the world through kids. So you can open up a page and you'll see a Black kid, a Jewish kid, an Irish kid, and a Catholic kid, all mixed in one. And Kip is asking, how does this kid identify? How do you refer to this kid? That's what we're seeing now. That's the world. This is why this graphic gives you a good sense. Now, as you look at this graphic, y'all, think about your skills. Are you ready? Are you woke? Are you inclusive? Are you accepting? Do you have the skills? All right. That's why when I look at the work, I look at it in 3 prongs: knowledge, preparation, skills. All right. And if you say you're ready, I want to know your proof. I think educators, I think role models, mentors, I think teachers, I think they should have portfolios that demonstrate the work that they're doing around these issues. That's what I'm proposing in schools now. In the future, is kids get report cards, so teachers should get report cards too. What's your knowledge, preparation, skill set? These are 3 ways to look at the future of the work, to be thinking about that. All right, let's take a look at this slide. This is just today, yesterday, tomorrow. These are the issues. These are the terms. These are the words. These are the definitions you need to be familiar with. Here's a way for you to give a little test, a little self-analysis, a self-assessment, a self-evaluation If you say you're committed to, you're down with, you're open, you're inclusive, here's a way for you to begin to understand where your skill set lies. How familiar are you? How competent are you? How well do you know, are you familiar with some of these terms we're looking at right now? I want to take one term, okay? This is your first interactive exercise. I want you to write this answer in the chat. Y'all ready? Okay, here's your question. I want you to respond in the chat, right? Yes or no, all right? The question is this: can everybody be a racist? Can anybody be a racist? That's the question. Yes or no? Let's see, Aubrey, how are we looking there on these responses? Can anyone be a racist? Oh my goodness, yes, yes. I got a no from my good brother Cedric. What's up, bro? Good to see you, man. Yes. Okay. This is great. This is great. Now, this is again an example of terminology, of definitions. Now, where I grew up, I learned from Naeem Akbar. I learned from Jawanza Kajufu, Afrocentric. Only white folks can be racist. That's what I learned growing up in my professional development, my professional training, right? I can tell you where I got my definition, how I came to understand racism. That's what I'm asking you. Not only if you believe this to be true, like everybody can be a racist, but where did you get that definition? Where did you come to understand what racism means? And this is important for us to understand today. I argue many people are walking around in their organization not even clear about what the terms mean. So somebody gets accused of doing something racist, and there's not even any clarity about what the definition is. So this is one example. In the definition, I would argue racism has changed. If you ask this question, I would say of the general population 20 years ago, I think you get a different kind of response today. But let me just ask anybody want to share where you got your definition? I'm always interested in any participants sharing. Where did you get your definition of racism? Anybody who answered yes, or anybody who answered no? I'm just trying to get y'all involved now, because I don't want to talk the whole time. And if I need to call on you to unmute and show your smile, I can do that too, because I am a teacher. That's what I do. So anybody want to say, I'm just interested, where did you get your definition? Anybody want to share?
Yeah, I can say something. Hi, it's Jamel here.
What's up, Jamel?
And I just grew up thinking the first thought that comes to my mind is racism is just treating somebody unfairly or differently just because of the color of their skin. And that's just the simple answer that I just grew up with.
Right, Jamel, thank you for sharing that, bro. I appreciate that. That's really helpful, because again, it's not about who's right, who's wrong. The question is about having an understanding of where that definition came from, so that as we're experiencing these terms, having these terms happen throughout our society, in our communities, in our school buildings, in our workplaces, it's just important to have clarity.
Exactly.
It's important to have clarity.
So when I think about it, so a lot of people say you can't be racist towards white people. And that's like something that I hear pretty often. So when I think about racism, it's like when you are affected by your race and it actually affects you. So when it comes to like things, when you think about like people redlining, not being able to get like specific mortgages or something, I feel like it's more than just like calling someone a name, because you can quote unquote be racist to white people, but it will never affect them like it does people of color. It will actually affect like how we live our lives. And I feel like that's kind of like with the difference, like, yeah, you can be like racist, but like, I don't know, when it comes to that, I feel like you have to like live it to really understand.
I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Is it Reem?
Reem, yes, hi.
Reem, what's up? Thank you for sharing that again. Powerful, and just really important to have people. If you're not sharing, I just hope you're thinking about where your definition came from. Now, this is something I've been at since, like I said, 1996. I started America and More. And what I learned at that time is racism is prejudice, which everybody has. Everybody has bias. Everybody has prejudice. But racism is that prejudice, that bias, and the power to do something with it, like cost people their job, or cost people an interview, or cost people access to housing, as Reem was referring to. Racism is that prejudice plus the power to do something with it. That makes sense? That makes sense? Now, again.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. It's like it actually goes into effect that way.
Yeah. Now, again, listen, I'm not saying for us to sing Kumbaya after this session and everybody agree on the same definition. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying most organizations don't have the conversation about what it means. And you have people calling people racist, and what they did was a bias situation or prejudice thing. That makes sense. And so we gotta have, this is why I think it's really important when it comes to these terms, and especially today when these terms could mean very different things. I mean, Reem, Jamil, I'm just looking there, coming from a whole different generation than I'm coming from. So there could be some generational difference there, right? So we gotta have some clarity. That's the thing that I'm really emphasizing to people. As you look at this sheet, now think about this. Here's what I want you to think about. Looking at this slide, how many of these words do you have no idea what they mean? Are there things on here that you have no clue? You have no experience with? Because here's what I can tell you right now, is if you're at work in the 21st century and you don't have any clue about some of this terminology, you will lose your job. It could cost you your career. In fact, I'm sure my brother Cedric can tell you, if you're interviewing at his college, there could be students asking you about these terms. And if you don't show any competence, any level of understanding, you won't make it to the next round. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
So what I'm really asking us to be thinking about here with this slide is the vast amount of knowledge, competence, skill that we need when it comes to diversity and inclusion. This is the only topic I feel like there's no real rigor being applied. It's like everybody wants everybody to be kumbaya and get along and hold hands and sing the same song. I'm not saying I'm opposed to that. I'm just saying the work of diversity and inclusion is tough work. And the next 25 years, this work has become even more complex. Come on, y'all, look at these terms. Look at these things. Some of y'all 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Now, maybe some of you youngsters just getting out of college, out of grad school, or still in grad school, maybe y'all are having right now some readings about some of this stuff. But when I was in undergrad, we didn't have gender pronouns. I learned pink and blue, dude and girl. There was no fluidity. There's no questioning. There was none of that conversation happening in the world that I grew up in the world I was learning, even at college, particularly as an athlete in the football program, just some of the most unhealthy teachings, in fact, around some of these issues. Sometimes it's not just work I'm learning. There's some things I'm trying to unlearn. This is, over the next 25 years, this is the real challenge ahead of us. This is what I want y'all to be thinking about. This is what I want to challenge you with before you talk about how inclusive you are. That to earn that title of a commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is rigorous. We can't just let people be claiming to be all accepting because they have one Black friend, or they went to Cancun for spring break, or they listened to Three Amigos, or whatever. It's so amazing to me to see the superficial claims that people are using to demonstrate their commitment to diversity. This is tough work. This is hard work. And this slide, I hope, just gives y'all a sense. Some of you have admitted to seeing words on this slide that are prevalent in the work of diversity and having no clue about what they mean. Now, that doesn't make you bad. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it gives us a sense of just how this work is evolving, how it's expanding. And if you're not keeping up, you're being left behind. And it's quite possible if you interview at Amazon and you don't have a sense of what gender pronouns are, that may cost you your interview.
And Dr. Moore, barbecue style. Hey, this is Aubrey. So being African American, am I exempt? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I always think of racism. You talked about where our definition of racism came from. I'm a child of the 70s, so you know racism was taught to be with a level of militance, something to watch out for, something that's interpreted by me as something that happens to me. But as an African American man, you know how should I approach some of the other besides race, the other, I don't know what we call conditional statements. How do I, or groups, or how do I approach the different sectors of individuals, I'll say, and give the appropriate levels of support and acceptance? Is there something I do? Is it active? Like I grew up to think racism was, or any feedback?
Well, this is why the work of Kimberly Crenshaw is so important. The sister that really came up with the term intersectionality, that really talks about the importance of us, even as Black people, can have bias, can do oppressive things, right? And that even though you have a understanding of race, that you can still have some homophobia, some oppression associated with LGBTQIA+. So what I would say to you, Aubrey, and I appreciate you raising that question, that as I would agree with you, myself included, having some real comfort and some understanding, some experience in my lifetime with race, quite often, that's something I've got some real competency around. But as I look at this screen, even me, I'm Dr. Diversity, like this is the work I've been doing my entire career. And there's still things on this screen like gender queer that I've got some major struggles with, some major work to do. So I want to be clear to y'all that as the expert participating in delivering the knowledge, I am also simultaneously a participant, realizing that I still got work to do. That's the key, Aubrey, is an acknowledgement that everybody's got work to do. I used to think white folks, if they could just get it together, come together. Right now, white people, that's who need diversity work. But now, the more I understand this work, this is work everybody has to do. And looking at this screen, Aubrey, I think it's safe to say that when we were growing up, there are some things that are now in play around diversity that are brand new, like microaggressions. I remember, do y'all remember when it used to be LGBTQ? Now it's IA+. Okay, you remember when people used to say, oh, I'm colorblind. When I look at you, I don't even see color. I treat everybody the same, right? These are these are just samples of things that we're seeing change now. What about BIPOC? How many of you refer to yourself as a BIPOC person growing up? I mean, so this is just a sample of the work, the rigor, and something I really want to encourage us all to take a step back. And before you claim to be inclusive minded, before you make a definitive statement that you're down with diversity, that you have an understanding of what that means, that it takes work to build, to become, to be an inclusive minded person. And it's work everybody has to do. Now, as we move forward, I want to just point out that even racism, though, is changing now. I mean, y'all probably are familiar with Professor Kendi, I'm sure, right? Now, y'all know Kendi's work is, this is one of the most read books in the last 2 years. Okay, now he's really got some Black folks mad, though. Because Kendi is saying everybody can be a racist. And when you read his book and hear his case for that, I'm even thinking, someone trained by Naeem Akbar and Duanza Kunjufu. Well, ooh, that's a pretty good case he's got there. So he's even pushing me as Dr. Diversity to do some reconsidering. Now, I see here, Ashley, is that a hand up or is that a shout out you giving a brother?
No, no. I just had a question, just to clarify. So I understand like the PowerPoint that you just showed us about racism, and then like I don't remember what it was, like gender. Can you go back to the other slide? Is that possible? Yeah, like gender pronouns and transgender. For me, I don't look at that as being racist. I feel that's like being sexist. Am I standing correctly, or is it all just in one? I'm just trying to get a better understanding. I don't look at it as racism.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. Yeah, racism is just one aspect of the slide that we're discussing. Yeah, it's not encompassing of transgender, right? Although people who are transgender definitely have a transgender experience as people of color differently than white folks who are transgender. And that's where the racism may factor in. When Kimberly Crenshaw talks about intersectionality, that's where it comes from, is the compound oppression that people experience because of their multiple identities. But you're right, this is not to say racism is transgender. This is saying racism is just one of the questions, one of the terms that's evolving that we've got to have a better understanding of, along with genderqueer, white supremacy, BIPOC, POC, gender pronouns, all of these words. I could spend 5 minutes on each of them talking about how they're very different, and in some cases, for some people, even very new. That makes sense?
It does very much so. Thank you. I just want to clarify, and that does make sense. Like people do get treated with racism on different cultures of being queer or transgender or LGBTQI, or, I'm still learning the different labels or what people put labels on people as an adult.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. This is the future of the work. I mean, whether people like it or not, I mean, however people get a sense of or feel about people, describing people or people wanting to be described, as you can see in my name, I have my gender pronouns. And again, it's not to say that I'm fully competent in this area, but what I know is when you show your gender pronouns to young people, they see you have some competence around that. It gives them a signal that you have some openness, some willingness.
I will also say, on sort of like stemming from that, it also shows like transgender people and people of that specific group that you're willing to have a conversation with them and sort of understand them, because pronouns are becoming a very big thing nowadays. I'm sure you see it like on a daily basis, especially with you putting it there. And so to just make them feel sort of more comfortable and on a sort of like level playing field, because they are discriminated against a little more than like straight people, I would say. Which I think is like nice that you're seeing it more and more, like on social media or something. It like puts a little place for you to put your pronouns. So the world is changing in and of itself. And
most definitely.
So good. Thank you for that, Reem. Thank you for that. So this, I want to remind y'all, this slide is actually a self-evaluation, a self-assessment. It's a way for you to really get a sense of, are you evolving? Are you expanding? Are your skills around diversity and inclusion actually improving, growing? Because the work is expanding. It's growing. Now, I know we've had people actually win campaigns asking America to go back in time. I know there's some things people would love to hold on to from back in the day, but this is one Black man that kind of likes the clock moving forward. I don't want to go back. All right. And what we're seeing in the workplace, in the university space, this is the future of the world. diversity and inclusion. And the more you can get, this is one example of a skill set, like the competency, the language, familiarity with the language, to be able to have the practice, to be able to refer to folks in way or ask folks around that or have conversations with folks around. That's actually demonstration of competence. Okay. And so this is really this slide, a way for you when you get it from me to just be thinking about your growth, your expansion. This is what the workplace is asking for. This is what the future is asking for. This is what Apple is asking for. This is what Amazon is asking for. These are the competencies, the skill sets. These are the dynamics of the workplace that are showing up. Now, don't get me wrong. There's still some folks out there operating like 1960, no doubt. But the future is diversity, if you ask me. Now, I wanted to point out again, Kendi's work, because Kendi has really pushed this, everybody can be racist. And it's really shifted some of the conversations we've been having around this. Now, if you don't know, I mean, Kendi's really understanding of that came from his first book project that he wrote about understanding racism, where racism came from. Stamped from the beginning. If you know that big text that he put together, that was basically a history exploration of where racism came from. While he was doing that, he was realizing how racism had been a part of his learning, his understanding, his behavior. And that's how this project sprang out, how to be an anti-racist. So it's important to understand that kind of connection between those two projects. But this concept of anti-racist, I think, gives us a chance to add rigor to diversity work. That, yeah, you can be committed to diversity, but are you anti-racist? It's like that. It's like CrossFit diversity. It's that next level. That's the way I'm introducing Kendi's work around becoming anti-racist. It can be that real day-to-day rigor that challenges us to be committed to creating spaces, places, organizations that are anti-racist. Now, you hear some people talking about that, but this is what we're seeing happening more and more now. Okay? And he shares in his book, the journey to being anti-racist is really about persistent, constant, regular, a day-to-day commitment. And this is what I love about this, right? Is you can't just read a book once every 2 days. Right? You can't just go to the Black History Month program. Right? He's saying persistent self-awareness, constant self-criticism, regular self-examination, day to day. I love it. It's rigorous. This is hard work. That's what I love most about what's happening with the work around diversity is now we have a high level of commitment, a way to really challenge people to go to the next level. CrossFit diversity, calculus diversity. Okay, and that's what I've been working on, is really helping organizations do that, coming up with my own model. That's what you're looking at there. I don't have time to go through that. And again, you may not want to go all the way that Dr. Diversity is going. You may not be ready for CrossFit diversity, calculus diversity, but you should at least know some little stuff, okay? Just make sure you have basic understanding, because what we're now realizing in the workplace, if you don't know little things, it'll cost you your job. That we don't have the luxury being as ignorant around this topic as our parents and grandparents had. And it's not just race, it's gender, it's sexual orientation, sexual identity. I mean, the days of those days are over. And so you need to at least know some little things. Why? Because stuff is going to happen. There's just going to be stuff happening in the workplace, in the world space, that's going to be challenging us to have conversations. These are just some of the things that have happened most recently as a way for me to talk to people about Again, how you can go to bed at night, wake up the next morning, and boom, that's what's going on. Who would ever thought it, right? That a college player now can almost make $1 million. Now, everybody had asked for this, right? They're paid college student. Now, what's it like to have a millionaire college student on campus? I think this is an interesting conversation we got to be having about this. What's it like to have a Black woman say, you know what? I'm sick of these white folks interviewing me this way. I'm walking away. Right? Like this is what we saw with the tennis player. What's it like to have one of the greatest minds the world has ever seen come in this form? Woo! In 2021, it's so lovely for some of us. Some folks are losing their mind at this sister presenting this genius in this way because they've never seen genius come in this form. We've known historically that we've had this in our communities, but think about this, right? North Carolina, I mean, all the places and spaces that are having to face the history they're having to face from a Black mind. These are things that are just happening right now that we're going to be seeing that we need to have some conversations about. I mean, literally people flying the Confederate flag in the state building. The first time in hundreds of years this has ever happened. This is what's going on right now. That people can literally have no understanding of the topic and wreak havoc at the school board meeting. They could be totally uninformed, incompetent about the subject matter and wreak the most havoc in reference to public education. That's what we're seeing right now when it comes to critical race theory. These are things that are happening right now.
And so many don't want to know.
I mean, this is what we're facing right now. Absolutely. Our Asian Pacific Islander friends, colleagues, having to deal with a level of physical danger that for some of them, they've never experienced in present day. That's what's happening right now. Right now. These are just a few slides that demonstrate what's going on in our society and the need for us, I argue, to be more than just 101. I mean, we need more high-level, high-skilled folks around these issues to assist with facilitating these conversations, helping our young people. And I think that too many people have been able to be totally incompetent, even people of color. Sometimes all you had to do is be Black and they consider you an expert. Even people of color, I would argue, have got to step up our competency level around these issues so that as things like this happen, what we're looking at on this slide, which have all happened in the last 2 to 3 or 4 or 5 years, that we have the skills to be able to help young people to be leaders around these conversations. Okay? I'm going to get to the end at the top of the hour, so I want to be able to have some time for questions. This is just a reminder that power matters. Resources matter. This is just a power slide with lots of things on there. What can you do then? If you want to be down with diversity, you want to be competent, you want to be knowledgeable, you want to be skillful, what can you do? Okay. Are you committed when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging? Which is a relatively new term, you know, belonging, by the way. I've been having some reflection about this term because I think that when you spend so much time in historically white spaces that you tend to adjust to what belonging really feels like. So you really don't have a natural feeling of belonging. It's what's manufactured for you. And so some of my friends and I've been having this conversation about what it, for a person of color, specifically Black person who grew up in a Black neighborhood, is it when you say you belong in your workplace today and it looks completely opposite of that, is that really belonging or some adjustment you made? Dr. Powell has really introduced a whole, conference and books and projects on this term belonging. But let me ask y'all right now, how many of y'all feel like you belong at your organization? How many of you feel like you belong at your job? I mean, some of you are, maybe fortunate enough to be a little RETIRED. And so you ain't got to worry about those meetings every day in those historically white institutions. But we got some folks here with some paycheck outfits on. And I'm just wondering, do you feel like you belong at the historically white institution where you work, organization? What does that feel like? Have you even known the feeling of belonging as a person of color in a historically white, predominantly white environment?
Yeah, this is Aubrey again. So Dr. Moore, you and I have talked about this a little bit about the progressive states, the progressive organizations, and, most organizations have some rules that say the things you shouldn't do. And then a lot of organizations have taken a couple steps forward to try to boost the acceptance of everyone and let a person be their authentic self at work or, at work, at home, when interacting with your colleagues or whatever. But, one thing I see is I'm trying to draw the line or trying to assess how much of it is prescribed by the rules that are required at a company versus how much of it is authentic. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And, how much should be, I don't know, but, you can feel it sometimes when a person is truly open and a person is truly welcoming versus a person who is afraid to say any word, they only want to say the color black, because they don't, because of fear. So, in your research and have you come across that? Have you seen any, from a perspective of companies, anything where companies are doing, or just, your thoughts on that overall?
Yeah, most companies have been, in my experience, measuring their diversity progress by numbers, by the presence of diversity. And that's, one of the things I learned early on in the work. Plantations were diverse. So it's not just the numbers that's there, it's also the power, the culture, the structure. And so what I talk about and what I've been really, when we're talking about, especially organizations that want to become anti-racist, that you got to make a definitive declaration that this is the kind of environment you want to create. And you got to measure that, you got to evaluate that, you got to talk to the people. So that if I wanted to know if you felt welcome at your new job, if you feel like you belong there, the only way I would know is to be able to talk to you and be willing to hear what you're saying. And often what people have been able to do, organizations have been able to do actually, is just demonstrate belonging by numbers, not by experiences, testimonials. And that's what I'm hoping we're going to be able to push people to do and bring a change over these next 25 years. And so I think it's just interesting. I just like people to think about what belonging feels like. What does it feel like? When you leave your house, do you get the same feeling when you show up at work? And what would it take for you to be authentic, 100 at work all day, every day? Or if you have to adjust at work, what percentage of yourself do you have to leave at the door when you walk into the workplace? So these are the ways in which I've been really talking to people and getting people to think about, particularly this concept of belonging, which again, I think has been relatively new in the last 5 years. So let me give y'all some action though, because we won't be able to change all institutions, all organizations in this short amount of time, but I can give you some stuff you can do if you want to be better. Okay, if you want to get better at this work, this is Dr. Diversity since 1996. Here are some of my suggestions for you. And I'm not saying I'm the be all end all. That's not what I'm saying. But I will go back to some of the earlier slides to say the work is changing. Terms, all those kinds of things are coming out there. Issues, all those kinds of things that we saw in the issue slides are going to continue to happen in America. right? Opportunities. Some of you are going to find yourself, especially you young folks in your 20 somethings, 30 somethings, over these next 20 years, you're going to find yourself in positions and opportunities that didn't exist for your parents and grandparents 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I mean, we're in really the innovation, creation, diversity, I mean, just premium high spot right now in America's history. That's what the census is showing. Not only is the population changing, but the electric cars, I mean, all the things that are happening, technology. We're just in a critical time, I think. And so what I'm saying to young people especially, but even myself, as I'm trying to stay relevant as a dinosaur now, I'm turning into a dinosaur now, I'm trying to stay relevant. Here's some of the things I'm doing, okay? Number one, you got to speak your mind, right? The best friend that hate has, the best friend that segregation has, isolation has, is silence. And so one thing I always encourage people to do is don't hear that joke, don't hear that comment and sit there and say nothing, even though you disagree with it. It's not that you're going to change the mind of the person, but at least get into the practice of saying something. The way I sum it up for young people, the best friend that hate has is silence. We got to be active, speaking our mind. And again, you want to be navigating, the time and place. Maybe you got to pull somebody aside. Maybe you do it in a small group, or maybe you got to just stand up in the crowd and say, hey, this is not right. But say something. That's number one. Practice that. These are some great resources out there for you in reference to books. If you're interested, these are some great books for you. Some of these you may be familiar with already. One of the best ones I've just listened to is this one by Dr. Jonathan Metzl called Dying of Whiteness. We talked a little bit about Kendi's book, which is great. There's just some great resources out there. There's some Seattle folks here on this list, but these are just some of my favorites that have helped me in my growing and my expanding. But if you're gonna build your skills, you gotta contribute the time. You gotta read, you gotta consume. I mean, I ain't gotta tell y'all that, but these are just some of the few that I like, that I encourage people to check out. All right. This is especially important. Y'all are familiar, I'm sure, with Dr. Joy DeGrew's work, post-traumatic slave syndrome. If you're going to be pursuing justice, equity, belonging, inclusion, especially in historically white environments, predominantly white institutions, as a person of color, especially, you got to take care of yourself. People in general, I think, are not very good about taking care of themselves. Self-care. I know somebody on this screen already hearing me on their shoulder talking about self-care. People don't know. Now, let me rephrase that, y'all. I had no idea how to self-care. I'll just speak in my statement, in I statements. All right. My mama taught me, boy, you wake up early. Boy, you work twice as hard. Boy, you stay up twice as late. Like, the way you are successful is you put in the extra time. Right? She never said take 2 weeks vacation. I remember thinking people in England, like, they take a month's vacation. I'm thinking, who takes off work that long? That's some lazy folks. I thought that was a bad thing. Right? I had to reassess, reevaluate, reconsider what self-care was. That's me. And I'm trying to get better at that and trying to be okay with that. Because sometimes I have myself thinking, should I really be doing this for myself? If you're pursuing justice, if you're working on issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, you got to have a self-care plan. Ask people, ask your friends, ask yourself, and don't just say yes. Ask for clarity, specifics. What are you doing to self-care? What have you done in the last month? We've experienced in the last 2 years a historic pandemic in which we've been, in many cases, limited in ways we've never experienced since we were kids, toddlers even. How have you taken care of yourself during the pandemic? Have you taken care of yourself? These are some really important questions I think we got to ask each other. You got to ask yourself. And so to help people take care of themselves, we created a self-care plan. This is one of the links. It's free. So you could just click on it, the 21-day self-care plan. You can do one thing a day, 21 days in a row. These are some great books. I mentioned Dr. Jordy Grew. If you haven't seen the work of Resmaa Menakem, it's a brilliant text. It's a New York Times bestseller. It's one of the, I think, more recent contributions to people taking care of themselves in a world of white supremacy, white cultural dominance. What are you doing to take care of yourself? All right. I'm going to get to the end. I hear you. All right. Oh, I got a little time. All right. And as you think about building your social justice skills, your knowledge, your skills, this is the plan we created to help people do that. Okay. And all you got to do, if you want to get started today, you can put your phone right up there. This is free. It's free. Do you want to be committed to justice, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging? Okay. Have you done any work in that direction? Now, taking a class during college does not count. Remember what Kendi said, every day. What we're saying, what I propose is that people do one thing a day for 21 days in a row. Just try it. Just try it. I argue most social justice professionals have never made that kind of commitment. 21 days in a row. To actually make an attempt to build this behavior into your day-to-day practice. That's what I think it requires to be committed in my mind. So that's what we designed here with this tool. It's free. You put your phone up there and it'll come to you right now to your phone. And we're not going to be selling you light bulbs. We're not going to sell your or give your we're not going to give your email or your phone number to anybody. This is just so you don't have to download anything. All you got to do is type in your email address. Boom, you're going to get the 21-day action plan. You'll get one thing a day for the next 21 days that comes right to your phone or right to your email. There's no excuse. And okay, you don't have to do it. That's cool. But don't walk around talking about you committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, is all I'm saying. Just say you would like the world to be a better place and you're doing whatever you can in your spare time. And I'm okay with that. Just let me know where you stand. Let's not let people be able to claim a commitment to diversity as we move forward. This is what I think is needed that's different today. Let's not just let people claim to be committed. Let's ask them for proof of their commitment. That's what this was designed to do. It's free of charge, okay? It's, it's been piloted in 50 states. We think now, up to date, 1 million people have tried the 21-day action plan, and we're getting some remarkable results, and it's free. But let me just make one thing clear, that it actually takes 66 days to build the habit. 21 days is just to get started. Can you do 66 days of one thing a day in a commitment to equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging? That's rigor. That's what I'm advocating as we look ahead, the work ahead. All right, let's get towards the end because we want to get some questions out. Are y'all woke? Y'all woke? I mean, I know you're awake, you know what I'm saying? But are you woke? Y'all know what woke means, right? I mean, I don't know.
Yes.
Do we know what woke means? Y'all woke?
I'm
Now,
woke.
the definition is basically wake up and question social norms. One way to know you're not woke is if you say, I can't wait till we get back to normal. That's a sign that you're not woke. Okay, if you ever find yourself saying, oh, I can't wait till we get back to normal, that's a sign that you might still be asleep or at least napping on occasion. Wokeness, at least according to the definitions I've kind of synthesized, narrowed it down to, is you question the way things have always been. And if you click on the link above this, you can see the article where I pulled that from. All right, but if you're woke, that means there was a time you were sleeping. Now, some of what we've been talking about in predominantly white spaces is people of color have been frustrated because it feels like we've been woke for years, like we've been awake every day, and our colleagues, our white colleagues, have been able to rest and nap for years. But it's interesting when you have this in a really diverse space, what people mean by woke and how people have come to being woke. The question is, how do you stay that way? That's most important, that we don't go back to sleep. That's some of what I've tried to provide. And I want to close out with one more survey question for y'all. One more, all right? Answer this. Will we see racism come to an end in the next 50 to 75 years? Will racism come to an end? Will we see it end in the next, let's say, 50 to 75 years? That's your next question for your chat. Yes or no? Yes or no? Will racism end? Will we see it? Dang. Oh. All right. Get some participation. I appreciate y'all closing out here. Thank you for that. Mel, appreciate that. I've been entertaining this question since I saw an interview with Professor Kendi, and he was asked this same question. And he was talking about emancipation and how there were people during that time believing that emancipation would never come. And it got me to thinking about just what's happened in my lifetime. I'm the founder of the White Privilege Conference, and I remember in 1999 when we were getting ready for the first conference, some people called me into their office and they said, listen, if you keep the name of the conference, nobody's going to come to this conference. And here we are celebrating our 23rd year now, right? I remember saying, Obama, ain't no white folks, he ain't going to elect no black man into the White. You going to have a black woman in the White House? Nah. Not on our watch. Maybe our kids will see it. I remember believing there is no way this is going to happen. And we saw 8 years. This is right in our lifetime. I remember thinking just recently, this is just recently, y'all, the Washington football team has taken away their mascot. I thought these billionaires, I mean, they do what they want. Ain't nobody going to force them to. There's no way. In fact, we just saw the Cleveland baseball team take away their mascot. They're now taking away one of the most racist mascots that ever exists, I think, in sports, and Chief Wahoo. And they're going to be called the Cleveland Guardians now. This all happened right in our lifetime. So why can't we? What would happen if we all made a 66-day commitment to end racism, to be better competent, to be more committed, to build our skills around these issues? And we did that 66 days and practiced that for the next 66 months. I don't know. I just don't think there's been a real great effort on the part of even the people in the choir to really make a unified commitment to end racism. I'm not saying I'm naive to believe it's going to go away easily, but I think I'd like to operate for the next 25 years as if we have a chance, and to show practice, show rigor, show some commitment to that endeavor. I hope in some way this has sparked y'all to do the same. And what I want to do now is just see what kind of questions y'all got, because I've run out of slides. So I'm gonna stop there and just see what y'all thinking now. What's on your mind? What's come up for you? What questions? What frustrations? What suggestions? What ideas? Y'all woke? Talk to a brother.
I have a question. It's a general question, and of course, anyone can answer it. If we define a racist as a person who has a prejudice and uses a powerful position to discriminate against other groups, why couldn't a Black person be a racist? Even against Black people. So when that came up, I was like pondering that question in my mind. Can somebody help me with that?
The way old Eddie would answer that is, if you're at a university and a Black professor gives you a bad grade as a white student, right? That Black professor could have a prejudice over white students and have the power to give you a bad grade, right? As an example, to try to use that as a case study, Melvin, what people would argue, old Eddie, as a part of those people, is there's probably a president or a board of trustees above that professor that will operate in the favor of that white student. So the system, there's no real power to impact the system that's in the favor of white people when they face a kind of racist act from Black people. And what New Eddie is now realizing, reading Kendi though, is he's given some real great examples of people of color participating, unifying with that systemic oppression, and they would either sometimes be in alignment with a white person, prejudiced and powerful, initiating the policy, or sometimes even taking the lead on that. And so he was saying and showing some great examples of that. Because of that, we have got to reconsider this. And I am doing exactly that. So hopefully that helps, but that's how I would respond to your question. And I'm glad you asked that, because that's, I think, again, a conversation we're just not having enough. We're not entertaining enough. And people are throwing that word racist around. I see students accuse white teachers of racist all the time. I see white teachers afraid to make any kind of disciplinary or any kind of challenging interaction with a student of color at times, specifically Black student, because they don't want to be called a racist. So we still have that need to have some clarity around that and conversations around that. Thank you for asking. Any other thoughts, reactions, questions?
I think I just got some words of encouragement for anybody that might be struggling and maybe still struggling to understand everything, and just one of the most important parts of this is just remembering to just respect the person or what their pronouns or whatever they're doing, because you might not understand it yet, or you might just be trying to understand it, but the most important part is just respect more than anything. And that's all I got to say.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
On what Jamel said, also, you never know who you're talking to and who that person is associated with and how they feel on certain things. So, for example, if you say derogatory things about like a transgender person to somebody that you don't know, because you don't think anything of it, you're just over here talking about it, you don't know how that directly affects that person. So I feel like just being mindful and just being kind is really just like the start to everything.
Yeah. Both powerful points. The thing I would say to both of you and to others, but especially young folks, is to, in addition to that kind of advice, to really be teaching people, to be guiding people, really helping them, because I really still believe that there are a lot of folks out there that are just operating in silence just because it's safer. And I think we really need to be continuing to encourage people and assist people with building those skills, because what I feel like we're seeing in corporations and organizations, I mean, there are even affinity groups in corporations around gender identity now. And so there could be a question to you about gender pronouns, gender identity, sexual orientation as you're interviewing for the job. And so not to ask you to be identifying yourself, but to talk about your experience with that or your understanding of those ERGs. And so I think that's the one thing I'm saying to people, especially young people, is that in addition to being kind and in addition to asking questions, that you got to spend some time building your skills. There's just things you got to know that your parents and grandparents didn't have to know when it comes to the workplace in the 21st century. That's the only thing I want to add to that. I see you, Reem. You got another point?
I do not.
Oh.
Dr. Moore, can you go over a little bit about white privilege? I know you have your conference coming up next year, but can you just talk a little bit? That's how we initially met, and just talk about a little bit about white privilege.
Yeah. So as Barbara mentioned, I'm the founder of the National White Privilege Conference, which I founded in 1999. Our first conference was in 2000, and we're going into our 23rd year this year. And this is a conference really designed to study the work beyond diversity, that once we begin to understand some terminology, we begin to understand how diverse our communities are and how we can do a better job, so on and so forth around those issues, then we got to move to what I mentioned with that other slide, power and systemic organizational design. And in America, we're in a place where it was designed by white people for white people, systemically, organizationally, everything that was put together and put in place across America in the earliest times was designed in the narrowest form. Now, we've had some changes, of course, but what the conference is really designed to do is look at, even though we've had some changes and we've had, for example, a Black president, we've had, we got Black doctors, we got Black lawyers, are there still some things in the system operating in that narrow way? And so we look at education, we look at law, we look intersectional across all issues, and really not bashing white people, not saying white people are bad, but really giving people skills beyond just diversity, but to understand systemic design, and white supremacy ideology, which is also a part of America's history, and making sure that we're not having that stuff continue to spread and exist in the kind of strength and presence that it existed in the earliest start to our nation. So if you're interested in the White Privilege Conference, you can email me again. My stuff is on the slide. Next year's conference is going to be in Charlotte, North Carolina. Our theme for next year is going to be religion. So we're going to be looking at white supremacy, white privilege in the area of religion.
Hey, Dr. Moore, Aubrey again. I see we got Commander Hollis on from our previous session. And one of the questions we talked about was the use of data and social media and, the instant availability of a camera so that everybody can show what's going on. And we talked about how that's affecting policing to a degree. Do you also think that that's affecting, let's call it race relations, for lack of a better word, or diversity in workplaces and out in the world? I think of the brother who got the police called on him because a lady had her dog off leash in New York. Stuff like that. Like, do you think that data and instant availability of information is driving some of this massive change we're seeing right now, or was it just time?
Yeah, and I have mixed emotions about that. I mean, the camera has helped tremendously because, I can remember the film that Don Quinones did, What Would You Do when they did the bike incident in the park, just having two people do the same thing and get two different reactions. Some of y'all maybe remember the old ABC show where they had the black guy and the white guy rent the apartment and go try to do different things, get a car loan. So we have to be an acknowledgement that capturing it on camera has helped a little bit to be able to help people to believe the stories we used to tell them. Some of y'all may all have a story where somebody said, come on, it can't be that bad. So cameras have helped in that way, I think. And, it's also, though, I think to some extent made people all about technology and not relationships. I don't know if people are capturing it on camera so we can get better or so somebody can get fired. It's almost like the goal is to capture the worst thing so something bad can happen to someone. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes some of those things that are captured, and I don't have to tell my good brother there in Minnesota on camera, needed to be captured so that that person can lose their job. But that's the piece that I have mixed emotions about, is sometimes I feel like there's no grace, there's no space in reference to some of the mistakes. And we can go back to the example you gave of the woman in the park, that she deserved to lose everything. I think it's a great case study for, yes, we should be able to see how this is happening. Because if that brother would have came home and told y'all that happened in the park, somebody'd be like, come on, brah, couldn't have been that bad, right? But the other piece is, should this lady lose everything? And so that's been, some of what I've been talking about. And I invented this term called eduquence, that it's not about a ending of someone's career, but providing an opportunity for education. Now, if they don't accept that, then yeah, they need to go. And I think, again, depending on the injury caused, all right, loss of life may not have room for eduquence. I get that. But I think if we look at that park incident and Darren Chauvin, I think those are very different things where loss of life is a big part of that. Not to say that the brother in the park didn't experience some tremendous amount of trauma, but that's what I'm wondering people are doing with their camera. Are you capturing this to lose that job, to get them fired, or to provide us an opportunity for learning, for growth? And I think that's where we are right now when it comes to social media, race relations, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging.
I think we can say that Martin Luther King Jr. really used the cameras to educate and to teach us and to change some minds. And so that was one of the first examples that I saw where the media was used in the civil rights movement.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for that, Melvin. Yeah, I think at least there's been some things that I've read that footage that they captured at the Pettus Bridge was instrumental in really moving people in reference to coming on board and realizing, yeah, we got they're not making this up.
Right.
So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, that's important.
That's one of the things that Obama talked about a lot too, was, now they just can't hide it because of everybody has a camera. And so, yeah. I have an observation, if you will. I remember back in the day, when I was in a predominantly white institution as a teacher. And this is in reference to the question you asked about belonging. And I noticed that the more I assimilated and the more I adapted to the culture of the institution, the more it seemed that I was embraced by the people in the institution. And so, and that took, quite some adapting. And, having come off the street. And so, but one of the things I notice now, and this is what I would measure as progress, is that now the institutions are having to do some changing in order to adapt to the new populations that are here. And so assimilation is, there's probably still a certain amount of that, but I think that's one of the issues, or one of the good things that we're seeing, is that that tendency to compel one to assimilate. Whereas now you mentioned Microsoft, and I heard Aubrey talking about, no, Aubrey at one point mentioned Microsoft, and I think Dr. Moore mentioned a couple of other organizations that, well, you had to have this terminology now. You have to be able to accept all of this other diversity that can add to your institution. So I think that's a good thing, a trend that has changed.
Yeah, you make a good point, and I distinguish that as assimilation versus transformation. And I think it is, or at least feeling like in some places, there's been some effort to transform the institution as opposed to saying to the people coming there, this is how you have to be in order to be successful. But we're at a critical point. I think this real change in demographics that we're seeing across the nation, also the multiracial identities as it relates to those demographics, I think really presents an interesting time for us here in American history, where what does assimilation even mean? What does transformation mean? Am I Black? Am I white? Am I Asian Pacific Islander? I mean, we're seeing all of this happening at the same time amongst young people. And I just think it's a powerful, interesting, and awesome time to be at the forefront of this work. That's why I'm encouraging young people, get competent, get skillful, because America's going to need more people across our nation in all areas and all fields that can really bring some knowledge, some competence, some expertise. We heard this from the police last week. I mean, these issues are not going to go away. There's always going to be some of those challenges. And we see this in the courts. We see this in education. We see this in finance. And so I think that this is really the time of diversity, is the way I'm talking about it. And the more prepared you are, the more knowledgeable you are, the more skillful you are, the more employable you are.
Yeah, there's been some critical points raised here. I appreciate the questions and responses this evening. I think that the points about the individual institution are very important to keep track of well in the context of how power is shared and not shared in this country. Perhaps this is the fourth America, right? And the earliest one was founded by Anglo-Saxons, which is a concoction as well, because there was Angles, there were Jutes, there were Saxons, and they all got pushed together. It mattered the founding generation, if you were in that category of Anglo-Saxon, and by with European immigration, the 1890s and so forth, it began to spread out that way. The idea of race, of prejudice plus power is a key one to keep track of. I'm trying to wrestle with Brother Kendi's definition about Black people can be racist. We can be, I just think we're not. That doesn't mean that we cannot practice the doctrine of white supremacy. We do it all the time. Cornel West reminded folks at the Holocaust Museum in 1996 when Bill Clinton was reelected that if this, put it this way, the country has And all of our school systems, and it has taught us the doctrine of white supremacy, doctrine of male supremacy, and the like. And if you don't have white supremacy in you, then you've missed what they were teaching you in school, right? Because that is there is no competing ideology. We're all but a set of reactions to that doctrine, right? And there are people who is twice as dark as me or Dr. Moore can practice that ideology. And as an individual, you can do all kinds of things. And we're keeping track of both of those. And I do think you're right in terms of when people step in it, like this woman who pulled on some very interesting cultural strings and trying to call police on his brothers who watching the birds and so forth. Where is the proportionality? Is it banishment or is it education, right? What's the consequence? And all that we try to do to stay connected with each other. Lastly, I've been enamored by the work of John Powell as well. He starts off with a basic proposition that we belong to each other and we have each other. But there are a lot of forces that are telling us that we're different and we're deficient. And the country is experiencing a lot of anxiety because a lot of them can't practice white supremacy in the same way that they did historically, because now there's some questions being raised. There's a number of white folks in the streets, whether people say they're performing or otherwise, right? Consciousness is being raised about this world in which we're living in, right? And how we are trying to get at some of these fundamental questions. And I do think it is an intractable part of our experience, but that won't stop us from struggling, right? To transform the reality in which we live in so we can get a Black president, we can have Black tennis stars, and we can continue to have the intellectual power and wisdom that's coming out of places and spaces where we don't historically see that. So I commend you all. Thank you, Dr. Moore. I think these habits we're trying to form are very important as we go through, and we're trying to create, in a final analysis, a world that does not exist.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to you, Barbara, and say my official goodbye and just remind y'all, if you want to get better around these issues, you now have a model. I mean, if we were to regroup a year from now and you're not any better, that's on you. And you have that option. This is America. But I do think you don't get the option to say, I'm committed to these issues and not do the work. And that's really what I'm trying to encourage people and support and partner with people around. Do we have time for Desmond's quick question? Because Desmond was waiting. He was waiting patiently. Desmond. Come on, DS. I hear you. I see you. You coming? Picture a visual. You running from the fridge to get to the mic? No?
Well, while you're waiting, I'd like to make one more comment. First of all, Dr. Moore, I appreciate your knowledge. I think we all do. And I think it shows something about Barbara Phillips as well, is that she knows how to put the right team together. And she finds the resources to provide these kinds of opportunities and resources for the community. And you were focusing on what she has been able to do recently. And I know that Barbara goes back at least 30 years. Okay, I don't want to put an age on her, but she's been around as long as I have, doing this work, and she finally got an opportunity to provide some resources. So I really wanted to make sure that I added that, because I don't say it very often. I certainly don't say it enough in public, and so we appreciate you doing this work, Barbara. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Melvin and Dr. Moore. I wanted Melvin to kind of close us out. We brought Dr. Moore in to do a work with a class, develop a class on the book, White Women Who Teach Black Boys. And I just like Melvin to do a quick overview of the courses that we've done over the past couple of years to educators. Due to COVID, we were able to develop and put it online, but I'll let him give an overview of the course.
The CNC created a course titled Teaching Black Students, and we use one of the books, the book that Dr. Moore co-authored, The Guide for White Women Who Teach Black Boys. And we did a pilot on it, and I won't go into all of the details, but the pilot was really well received. And one reason why I think it was well received is because one of the ideas that Barbara suggested, we put in the course, and that is to have listening sessions with parents. And so whereas the book talks about building those relationships with parents, with Black parents in particular, then we kind of put that into practice in the book. And so the teachers, surprisingly, I don't know why I would be so surprised, but surprisingly, the teachers really received that part very, very well after they got past the title of the book. And so then we ended up teaching the course at two other schools, and it was very well received. And so now we are putting the course online. And so that work is the foundation, basically, of the course. And what I like about it most is that the book itself, although it addresses the Black people and Black boys in particular, the concepts, the basic concepts, respect and connecting, those concepts can apply to any group of individuals or any group of people. And then one of the persons who took the course is now, we're experimenting with the course at her church. And so she's starting to teach the course at the church. And so anyway, so we really do appreciate, what Dr. Moore has brought to the CNC and to the CNC team. And also, when we think about the CNC, I'm just going to add one other thing here, Barbara, if you don't mind. I see a lot of the academic coaches here, on the screen. And if you ask me, the work that they do, to me, I think I've heard Barbara use the word flagship. That's the flagship program of the CNC. And it's because of their work. And that work is in demand just as much as the professional development stuff that we offer. And so the academic coaches, I want to also applaud you for your work and the work that Nichelle Mitchell has done in terms of supporting Barbara and guiding the academic coaches. Thank you for that minute, Barbara.
Thank you, Melvin. I just wanted to say, I see one of my first principals, Daksha, Miss Thomas. Come on, girl. We started off at East Hill working, Nichelle and I, having our academic coaches. So I can't let you go without having you say something.
Oh,
I miss seeing you.
I miss you guys too. I am outside and I came on late because I just picked up my daughter from soccer, but this is a topic that really is near and dear to my heart because I'm a principal right now at Seattle Christian Elementary School. I don't know how long, we'll see. But the issues in public schools are also issues in private schools. Not as much, but I miss these conversations. I miss being around people talking about these important issues. And so, Dr. Moore, I just want to say thank you for that book. When I was a principal in Federal Way School District before this, I actually had that book for my staff, you know, and we did some book studies and things like that with the book. And so really good stuff there. And Barbara and Aubrey and Melvin, all of us, we go way back, and it's just so good to see you guys. We'll have
Yes.
to catch up with some coffee, and I need to watch the recording.
Okay.
I will post it.
Okay.
Thank-
Okay.
thank-
That's the new book.
Oh, the new book?
The new book.
Hmm.
Okay, I
Um,
haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Moore, you can mention the title of the new book. You held it up, but you didn't. What's the title of the new book?
We call it the companion book, Teaching Beautiful, Brilliant Black Girls. So this is a book project. I took a big step backwards and had some phenomenal folks really put together what we think is a companion book that is even another step up with the Blackboard book. So yeah. So we want to, I'm hoping to do a series. So stay tuned for more.
Okay, well, thanks, Dr. Moore. Thank you, everyone, for participating, being here. Next week, next Thursday, is our critical race theory. And we have a special guest there that will present the information, have plenty of dialogue. So stay tuned. If you missed the session, it'll be on our CNC website, wacnc.org. The recording will be on there. The previous recording was there. And next week, it should be exciting. I'm looking forward to learning more about the critical race theory, as well as all the issues related to that. Thank you, Melvin, for your compliments, for everyone that's been supporting CNC. If you have any questions or you need more information, just reach out and touch, okay? Everyone be safe. Thank you for being here. Good night.